The Great Chicago Fire and the Myth of Miss O'Leary's Cow by Richard F. Bales. My name is Stuart Dunn, and this is for Professor Dilling. Welcome, Professor and classmates. I hope you enjoy my presentation. The author's perspective of the event. Bales wanted to debunk various theories and ultimately rid Miss O'Leary of her reputation of fire starter. A few theories, from quite a long list, include combustible hay, chimney sparks, a meteor shower, an act of terrorism, and a nighttime smoker. He extensively analyzed details from reports, property records, and newspaper articles, noting the inconsistencies and lack of careful questioning as a big problem. Chicago before the fire. Chicago had more than 334,000 people, about half being native-born Americans and half being Northern European immigrants. Location was key to the city's booming success. Its location near two major bodies of water, an inland water port through a canal, and an extensive railroad system made Chicago an economic, thriving city. A majority of the buildings and homes were constructed with wood. Even the sidewalks and road had wood slabs on them. Leading up to the event and the disaster, there was extremely dry conditions. Since July, Chicago had seen very little rain and very high winds. The fire department had lobbied for years before the fire for more hydrants and a change in building regulation and materials, and each request was shot down. On October 7th, a day before the Great Chicago Fire, a large fire broke out at Lowland Homes Planing Mill. The firemen fought all night and into Sunday. Had the Great Chicago Fire not happened the day after this, the Lowland Homes Mill fire would have been considered the Great Chicago Fire. So during the fire, I have outlined, I have a little timeline for the events. It begins in or around the O'Leary barn on Sunday, October 8th in 1871. The watchman on duty, who is located at the top of the courthouse in the city, reports the wrong location of the fire, and this delayed firemen. The fire quickly grows out of control and it leads the Chicago River. Gasworks explodes, which leaves the city without power, and the courthouse is ablaze and prisoners are let loose to escape. The State Street Bridge, which connects to the north side where the wealthier people live, catches fire. People continue to flee. The waterworks catches fire, which contaminates the city's drinking water and severely hinders water hoses of the fire department. Residents either seek refuge in Lake Michigan or are continued to be pushed north to the prairie. The Illinois Central Railroad Complex and the McCormick Reaper Works are destroyed. General Sheridan orders buildings to be blown up in order to stop the fire in the north side. This does halt some of the advancements, but the fire is not out completely. And rain on Monday evening finally helps end the path of destruction. To help visualize the progress of the fire, I've included a picture that kind of outlines the paths of the fire expansion. If you look in the southwest corner, you can see that this is where the fire originated on the O'Leary's property. And ironically, the barn was positioned in such a way and combined with the direction of the high winds that the O'Leary household was not damaged during the fire, only their barn. And it moved, and where you can see where it crosses the Chicago River in two different parts, and it advances into the north side. People are either pushed east into Lake Michigan, or they flee north to seek refuge in the prairie. The fire finally died out on Tuesday, October 10th, mainly thanks to the rain that came. Over 100,000 people were left homeless, which was roughly 1/3 of the population, and about 300 people were dead. Approximately $200 million in damage was done, and before the fire was even extinguished, Miss O'Leary was immediately accused, and she continued to deny until the day she died any wrongdoing in the fire. And the author put little emphasis on the rebuilding of Chicago and focuses on the theories surrounding Miss O'Leary and her cow. The author details 7 reasons for the magnitude of the fire, and for the sake of time, I'll only explain 1 or 2. So why was the fire so devastating according to Robert Bale? Number 1, fireman exhaustion. Majority of the firemen who had been fighting a fire not 24 hours before the start of this fire had no time to eat or even sleep before they were called back on duty. 2. Equipment disrepair and hose shortage, again in part of the fire that happened not a day before. 3. An error in judgment. When the watchman originally stated the location of the fire, he was off by about a mile, and when he called down to change his location, the man who was supposed to report to the fire department didn't want to add to the confusion, so he did not report the second location. 4. Brown's delay. This was the man who was supposed to relay the message to the department, but he did not because they also thought when they first spotted it that it was just a pile of coal or rekindling flame from the fire before, not a new fire. Number 5, an uncooperative druggist. Neighborhoods had fireboxes located around, so when someone saw the fire at the actual location in Miss O'Leary's property, they ran to the drugstore where the closest firebox was located, and they state that the owner did not allow them to sound the alarm, and the owner states that he sent 2 alarms, but they didn't go through. 6, inattentive neighbors. No one went to go sound the alarm until quite a while after. And 7, lack of engine support. There was just not enough men or materials to fight the magnitude of the fire. The relevancy of this disaster today. In April 1872, Illinois began the Burnt Records Act, also called as the Destroyed Public Records Act. And this is just legality focusing on original documents in relation to property ownership, and if these documents are destroyed in a fire, that they can be resubmitted and official copies can also be submitted. In 1872, they had the one platoon system, and the one platoon system meant all firemen were on duty all the time, as there was only one working shift. And this has since changed to alleviate worker exhaustion and better equip departments with more training and bodies. And nationwide, there is a strict fire code on building materials. Variations in views on the different works related to the Chicago fire. The guilt of Miss O'Leary and her cow are always a big topic. Author Robert Bale pegs her as innocent, and others just state this is the number one theory, and they continue to talk about the disaster. The physical depiction of Miss O'Leary also varies. Some paint her as in a sympathetic light, stating that she was a hard worker, that she had a loving family, and that she didn't really, everything was an accident. And others painted her as, some say she was 70, some state her as being 40, some call her a drunkard, some say that she was crippled and angry. All usually agree on the conditions and numbers of fires leading up to the disaster and also the weather conditions prior to. There was a few differences in minute detail, such as the number of firefighters and the amount of people left homeless, and there were varying focuses of the fire. So the author describes each possible theory related to Miss O'Leary and uses evidence from police reports, interviews, and property layouts to reduce the plausibility of each. He ultimately offers his conclusion of the cause, and he points his finger to Daniel Pegleg Sullivan and Dennis Reagan, which were 2 neighbors who Robert Bale says are the ultimate cause of the fire. One author focuses not on the uncovering of the reason it started, but rather why the story of Miss O'Leary and her cow was so powerful even to this day. And he stated that this one person to blame shifted responsibility and attention from a myriad of people who most likely played roles in the magnitude of the disaster. Other articles focus on the growth and rebuilding of the city, and while others focus on marital law and the lawlessness that followed the fire. And to answer your biggest question, the cow was never charged. As a matter of fact, the Chicago City Council passed a resolution officially exonerating Miss O'Leary's cow from any wrongdoing. Unfortunately for the cow, it is highly suggested that he actually perished during the fire. And these are a list of my references for both pictures and articles. Thank you.